Please listen carefully.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the third episode of the Study Space podcast created by the Uniplan team. My name is David.
And my name is Julian.
And we'll be your host for today. Today, we'll be discussing how to balance your college life, including academics, social activities, clubs, work, etc. But before we start, I have to ask, Julian, what's inspiring you today?
Well, David, today what's inspiring me is my dog. Because my dog, usually outside, he doesn't really listen that well. He does a lot of tricks at home, like inside the apartment, but outside that all sort of gets thrown out the window. But today he was actually a very, very obedient and followed directions and all that great stuff. And I think that shows that you can teach an old dog new tricks, even though he's actually not that old. He's like 2 going on 3. But still, I was a little worried that he wouldn't be able to like learn how to respond to commands outside. But today he was able to do it. So that shows that you can grow. Which is something that a lot of people I know struggle with. They don't know that they can grow out of weaknesses. They can't grow to acquire skills that perhaps they're very weak in. Or, if they just proceeded or pushed a little harder, they might cross the Rubicon or cross that obstacle that they were hitting, maybe grow out of whatever they're struggling with. So I think that's an important lesson that a lot of people need to learn. So that's what's inspiring me today.
Well, Julian, that turned from a pretty cute story to a very philosophical tale, but I think people appreciate that. And I think that's the first time that we've ever had an inspiration that's actually not academically related. Unfortunately, I have to ruin that because what's inspiring me today is that a check was mailed to my university today by the Asian Pacific Islander Association.
Nice.
And I got a scholarship from them, which is the same scholarship you got, Julian.
Yep.
But I think I got mine from the Wells Fargo Foundation, not Walmart, I think.
Yeah, I got mine from Walmart. For those of you who don't know, the APIASF, was it that one?
Yep,
APIASF?
correct.
Yeah. So the APIASF, which, you tell me what the acronym stands for. I remember or don't remember very many acronyms. I worked at NASA and I work at Oracle, and both of them have acronym soups. So it's hard for me to remember any acronyms now. But the APIASF has a bunch of companies sponsor the scholarships, and I think it's quite unlike some of the scholarships or a lot of the scholarships that I applied to, where it's like just 1 award or 2 awards. APIASF has like many awards, like more than say 20 or 30 students actually earn this award, and they're not like tiny like several $100 awards. Not to say that several $100 isn't nice, but they're quite large scholarships. They're like several $1,000s, which is really nice. It could pay for an entire semester. So yeah, I really appreciate that. I was one of the scholars that received it, but I was among a large group too. And Walmart just happened to be one of them, but I think Walt Disney, Coca-Cola, and your Wells Fargo is among the companies that sponsor the scholarship.
Yeah, I mean, I applied to a lot of scholarships. A lot of them were bigger ones, which had even more applicants than I think APIA did. But the problem is that they only had, let's say, 20 to 30, winners for each scholarship. And the scholarships are given are quite large, like 10,000, 20,000. And I think APIA ranges from 1,000 to 5,000. Mine was 2,500, which, it might not seem like it's great contribution considering all the other aid I got, but I really appreciate the fact that an organization was willing to, take time to give money to Asian Americans who are pursuing higher education, and that's something that's that I think really benefits the community, and it definitely helps a lot of people who don't really have the resources to go to college. All right, so let's start the podcast now. So obviously, for many incoming college students, such as myself, it can be pretty tempting to join a lot of activities and kind of dip your toe into everything possible, and that might turn into, many more commitments. So let's talk about first years and newer students and what they can do to balance, I guess, their college life. So Julian, from your experience, can you give us a little bit of insight into what you did your first year and how that impacted your grades, your social life, etc.?
So here's the thing: is that in high school, especially in my earlier years, my underclassmen years of high school, I wasn't a very involved student. Wasn't very involved student at all, actually. I was a freshman student. I didn't really know a lot of people, and I wasn't exactly the popular kid. I was kind of socially awkward, actually. Thinking about myself back in freshman year, I was a weird kid.
That's surprising.
No, I actually, if you knew me from when I was younger, you would actually find that to be quite unsurprising. I was an awkward kid. I was a weird kid. But I grew out of it. So that goes back to my inspiration, right? But anyway, in high school, I was certainly not a very active student in high school. And I knew that. In my head, I knew that. And I only started to grow out of my shell in junior year a little bit when I became VP of Mesa, and then continued that trend in my senior year. I got involved in more organizations like journalism, and just hung out with more people and stuff, and started going out. So I started growing out of my shell towards the end of my high school career. And so in college, I didn't want to sort of make the same mistake. I wanted to be more involved. I wanted to be part of the school community. In high school, I didn't really feel like I was part of a community. I wasn't part of this big family or this big group that nurtured the camaraderie of high school, right? So I wanted to change that in college. I wanted to do the whole shebang. I wanted to join Associated Students, which is a student body, or the student government. I wanted to meet a lot of friends. I wanted to join a bunch of clubs. I wanted to do this and that. Aside from fraternities, because that's not really my thing. But I know now that not all fraternities are like the stereotypical party groups. There are honor societies, which are like professional and
Right.
professional groups that sort of build up your skills and network and all that stuff, which is all well and good. But weird thing, despite realizing that I started growing out of my shell towards the end of high school, I didn't do all of those things when I entered university. I truly wanted to. I really did. But I didn't. I never joined many clubs at all. I didn't enter an honor society or a professional society. I didn't run for anything in student government at all. And really, my only social interactions were those that I made with my classmates or people in my major, and people in my classes. And
Right.
and that's a little weird. That's a little weird because, like I said, I wanted to be involved in the university community. And I think my only explanation for why I decided not to be super involved in everything was because I realized that I wanted to build up my professional skills much more than being involved in university. And I didn't come to this realization out of nowhere, right? I just explained that I wanted to be more involved in the university community, and then all of a sudden I just decide to focus more on my grades and focus more on my professional development, right? It didn't come out of nowhere. It actually happened for a reason. Going into university, I decided to move into my own apartment instead of living on the campus dorms. Okay, and by the way, the bit that I'm about to say can be interpreted as something that you shouldn't do. So perhaps this is a moment where you should do not, as I say, do the complete opposite. If you wish to be more social and you want to value the experience of university as much as possible, I don't know if I have to remind you, but I graduated in 3 years. Okay, so I was obviously ready to leave. I was obviously ready and willing to begin my professional career and not, dilly dally in university. I very well could have stayed the entire 4 years if I really wanted to, and took it easy every single semester and had a lot of time for social interactions. But I didn't want that. Part of the reason why I transitioned to this sort of mindset of professional development instead of, or valuing professional development over a lot of social activities was because I lived away from campus. And in university, I found that a lot of the club meetings or a lot of the extracurricular activities and social gatherings happened in the evenings and in the night. And I lived away from school. So it wasn't so simple as to get out of my dorm room and then just go to the library. And that's where the club meetings were. I had to drive back to school after going home, which is something that I really didn't want to do. Like I went to school for the entire day and I wanted to come home, and that's where I wanted to stay because I either had to study, do homework, or, just relax or cook food and, live at home. Like that's what I wanted to do. So first of all, it wasn't super convenient for me to just leave school and come back for these club activities. Really, the odds were stacked against me when I decided to move to my own apartment instead of living on the dorms. Secondly, I realized that as a software engineer and as a computer science major, especially in my freshman year, I realized that I had already intended to leave university in 3 years. I came into the university knowing this. My goal was to get out in 3 years. I was very, very headstrong about this goal of mine. So thinking about this goal, I quickly realized that I have less time than my peers right now in freshman year or I have less time to prepare for interviews, for jobs, for internships and all that, right? Usually for computer science and software engineering internships, the companies really want to hire, say, after your second year or after your third year, right? For me, I was already considered a sophomore. So really, a student at my level on paper should have already started preparing for technical interviews and software engineering internships and those kinds of roles, right? So I had less time going into university. So I really had to step it up. Okay, so in my first year, I'll admit that I valued professional development over social interaction. So I didn't really go out and do much. I didn't really join many organizations or clubs. The only friends I had were the people in my classes, in my major, and where I worked.
Right. So you said that obviously you focus on your professional development. And so did you actually do any sort of internships or I guess you could say anything that prepared you for your career?
So what I did was outside of my classes, I took more sort of online tutorials or I hesitate to call them courses because I'm already going to school for courses and stuff. And that's just saying like, oh, like I already have a full schedule and I'm going to do more in the evening, which is not really what I did. I sort of learned this when I felt like I could and I had the energy to do so.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But I did learn like how to program in different languages or design a website or build an app and all that stuff. So in my freshman year, I really like doubled down on learning new technologies as fast as I could. So I picked up a little bit of web development, started dabbling into a little bit of mobile development, and I also started looking into like how to search for jobs and search for internships, how to interview for those. So I spent a lot of my free time, preparing for the future.
Right. So, I mean, obviously, you said you had a different start to high school than everybody else. I mean, not high school. You had a different start at college than everybody else because you were starting off almost as a sophomore because of all your credits, and you were living in an apartment. So I think for a, let's say, average college student, so someone who's living in a dorm, so on campus, and someone who's going in with maybe like a few credits, but not quite enough to um, jump ahead a year, and they're still going to be graduating in 4 years. What would you suggest that they do in regards to professional development and/or social activities, so they can get the most value out of their first year in college?
Yeah, so I think it's all about your priorities, right? Your life priorities. A lot of people want to enjoy college. They see college as the place for you to try everything and grow out of your comfort zone, which it should be. It really should be. And sometimes that means hanging out with friends or going to different clubs and organizations and joining them and doing their activities. And that's all well and good, right? And I encourage that. A lot of people should encourage that because, not everybody is an enormous workaholic like I am, or like maybe you are, David. So you shouldn't, I guess, overwork yourself or solely concentrate on work and professional and career and all of those related things all the time, because you will eventually feel burnt out and you won't have the motivation and the drive that perhaps if you have more energy, then you can have that gumption to move forward with your career. It's good to take a step back, take a break, take a breather, and let loose a little bit with some social activities.
Right, definitely.
Obviously, I wouldn't be as successful as I am today if I didn't take a break once in a while. So aside from working on my side projects and learning new technologies, I did go out with friends. I wasn't just, stuck in my apartment the whole time. I went out to get, boba drinks. For those of you who don't know or aren't familiar with it, boba is like it could be tea. It's mostly tea. And then there's like these pearls, these chewy pearls on the bottom, and I think they're great fun. I think they're super tasty. So I went out to get those, with my boyfriend at the time, and then with my friends basically all the time, or whatever free time I had in between classes. Maybe like we would study at the tea shop or the cafe. So that was fun. So I would always do that. For students in particular that don't want to just churn out the courses and get out as quickly as you can. If you have more leeway, if you feel like you have more time, or you can, you feel like you want to value your experience rather than your career development, which is good, which is fine. Freshman year is probably the best year to do so, because it's the time when you're mostly focusing on your GEs rather than your core major classes if you're in a major. So you probably have more time and you have more, I guess, GPA leeway in terms of your courses to sort of let go a little bit. I hesitate to say that because that can quickly devolve into a bad habit of letting go all the time, and then it bleeds over into your upper division courses, and that's never good, right? So freshman year could be a very good year to let loose and play around, but it also could be a very terrible year to let loose and play around because you can build bad habits. So that's the big question, right? Like, how do you strike the balance between, play and work, right? I always say that it's better to stay organized and manage my my responsibilities, manage my obligations, get them done, and whatever free time I have left, I can spend that because I have already completed my minimum sort of responsibilities, right? So if I have homework like due the next day or an essay due that night, I have to make sure that I get that done before I do anything unrelated to that. So I always find that it's easier to get done the minimum amount of things that I need to get done first. That is immediately, whatever homework assignments are due like soon. and then any studying that needs to be done for an exam and stuff. After that, all that free time can be spent on other things. You can allocate it to professional development, like I did, or you can allocate it to your social activities, which is perfectly fine because that's time that you can spend. And I always do that after I've organized and made sure that I've gotten everything that I needed to get done, actually done. And it's always easier, I find, to manage the tasks rather than play and then realizing that I don't have enough time to get everything done, and then you're scrambling your efforts.
Right, definitely. So obviously you brought up that you should, have a minimum number of hours that you work, and then you kind of, after that, use your free time however you want. So we have a friend, let's just call him Princeton because he goes to Princeton. So obviously he's at a very prestigious school coming, from, I wouldn't call Bolsa a bad school, but say.
But it's not like
What-
okay, no.
what should we call Bolsa?
Let's be real here.
Okay,
It's
yeah.
not the best high school in the world,
Okay.
right? It's certainly not the most advanced. It's not the most strenuous, and it isn't really the most preparatory of high schools. Okay, let's be real.
Yep.
Right? It doesn't. I don't think necessarily it prepares you very well for an engineering career. Okay,
Right.
and that's what our friend Princeton wants to do, right? I'm assuming.
Yeah, computer science major.
Correct. So our school doesn't do a very good job at nurturing engineers and nurturing STEM students. Okay. There are a lot of students who are driven by their parents and their families and what is socially considered, I guess, prestigious or societally it is desired. So they are motivated by these things, and that's what sort of drives them in that direction, I find, mostly, right? And I don't think the engineers that will eventually graduate in the future from this high school, I don't think the high school does a lot or contribute a lot to that result. Let's say that, okay? But this person, this student, this colleague of ours, did go and gain admission to Princeton in computer science, which is amazing, which is fantastic. Okay.
Yep.
So let's talk about that. So what did he do?
So obviously, coming from, like you said, a somewhat inadequate school, went to Princeton, and he found it extremely, extremely difficult. He didn't really do anything outside of his classes because he wanted to focus on his classes. And I don't think he regrets this at all because he did manage to get straight A's. I think he got 2 A's and 2 A minuses, but he said it took a toll on him. And he said that if he joined anything else, it might have been volatile to his grades because it was just so difficult transitioning from, a rather insufficient school, going all the way to Princeton, which, as many people know, is one of the most prestigious universities in the United States and globally. So he definitely had a challenge there. And I just want to ask Julian, what's your advice for people who are having that sort of difficult transition? So let's say they're going from our school or like a school similar to ours to a very prestigious school where everybody is extremely competitive. What would you suggest for those people to do in their first years?
Right. I think we need to be clear that this student, okay, who went to Princeton, he chose to give up a lot of the university activities in order to maintain his grades, right? He chose to do this, okay? That's perhaps the most important thing, is that you never want to do something out of peer pressure, or you never want to do anything that is perhaps not very calculated, right? You need to make a decision.
Right.
You always make decisions. Everything that you do is a decision, but the difference is how much thought and how much time we take in making that decision. Okay? What this student did, what our colleague did, was evaluate his priorities, and he found that he valued his grades, he valued his academic performance over social activities in university. And while many people might find this imbalanced, right? Not very healthy. It's not fun. It's painful. But what did we mention in the previous episode? We said that we struggle and we go through struggles and we get through those struggles for a reason. If we have a reason, we can better overcome obstacles, and the result is something that is desirable, perhaps in the long term, right?
Right.
If this student, if this colleague of ours didn't have a goal in mind, and yet he struggled, then my advice would change. Then I would say you need to take a step back and you need to evaluate your priorities. You need to evaluate your life and your goals. Okay? He values his academic record. Okay? He knows that he's in a university that values or rewards somebody's academic performance, somebody's skills, right? Anybody who graduates from Princeton with, a bad GPA is going to be, I would assume, ashamed of him or herself, I would think, right? Because you gain admission to this amazing university and you feel as though, you didn't give your all, right? You never want to feel as though you never gave it your all. That regret, for me, I guess, is perhaps the most, it's the most heart-wrenching when I know that I could have done more. You never want to feel that, right? You never want to think back and think, I should have done more, I could have done more, and the result that I have right now is something that came of thinking in the short term rather than the long term. You never want to feel that way. So I would say my advice is evaluate your priorities. What do you want? And if it seems a little imbalanced, if you feel like, man, I want to get straight A's, I want to look like a good student, and I want my GPA to show that I work hard, that I have a good work ethic, and in the future, my hiring manager or the HR representative is going to see that and understand that I'm a hard worker. If you value that, and it causes your schedule, it causes your life to be a little imbalanced in the short term for just a little bit, maybe a semester or a quarter, then okay, you're struggling for a reason. And there's a reasoning behind the obstacle, there's a reasoning behind the struggle, and when you get through it, the result you get is something that is desirable in the long term. That's my advice.
Right, and two things that I actually want to bring up about our colleague at Princeton. The first is that I think he's incredibly motivated, outside of the factors that you were talking about: family, friends, peer pressure, society. He does actually want to make, an impact on his community. He plans to, I think, code a tutoring app, some sort of educational app, and that's what drives him, like similar to what we did. So I think, there's that factor where he is self-motivated. He's not relying on external factors. And so that's what motivates him to do well at Princeton. That's what motivates him to major in computer science and focus on his grades so intensely, because he knows that, at the end of it, he's going to be able to do something great and really give back to his community and use his skills for something that he finds important. The second thing that I do want to mention is that he also got like around 8 hours of sleep a night, I think, and he said he was still able to take naps. So his sleeping schedule, suffice it to say, was really, really good. I think you would call that a really good sleep schedule. Yeah, 8 hours with like 1 or 2 hour naps. I mean, that's like impressive coming from a Princeton student. But the fact that you have to note here is that he gave up a lot of social activities, maybe a few hours a day, so that he could, get more sleep, get more rest, and, ultimately focus on his studies more.
Right. So I think at this point, I want to also mention something. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that this colleague of ours is an introvert. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I'd say so. Mhm.
I believe the definition of an introvert is somebody who feels rejuvenated by doing activities that are more, I guess, not self-centered, but you like to do activities on your own or being alone and with your mind and thinking and sort of doing activities by yourself is what rejuvenates you, what gives you energy, right? And for him, that could be having more sleep time or time to himself to study and develop his skills, right?
Yep.
On the flip side of that, extroverts gain energy or feel rejuvenated in social gatherings or social situations, more social situations. They need to be around friends. They need to be around people in order to feel at ease or to gain energy, right? So we, David, may be introverts, or I guess me and my colleague, I'm not sure about you, but we may be introverts. So we prefer to be left to our own devices and be able to do things on our own, right? For other people, social interaction, social gatherings, and activities is what gives them energy. And if that is you, if this describes you, then perhaps joining clubs and doing those activities can have the same effects in terms of your motivation, your energy, your drive to accomplish things in school is the same as our colleague who sleeps 8+ hours a day. Or like me, who sleeps at least 6 to 8 hours per night, right? It can have the same effects. It just depends on your personality and depends on, again, your priorities and your goals, right? If you feel like you gain energy in social gatherings, that's perfectly fine. That's a good way to spend your hours. And then being alone is something that sort of drains you, then maybe joining those activities can actually be helpful. Those honor societies will sometimes, my understanding is that they have GPA requirements. Some clubs will have workshops and study sessions so that you can keep your grades up, but also still remaining in a social gathering or a social situation. So that can help you aside from how we like to do things just on our own by ourselves.
Right. I mean, I'd actually consider myself somewhat of an extrovert. I know that in my sophomore year of high school, I tried a lot to sort of blend my professional development with a lot of social activities, shall we say. So I joined a club that's called Men's League at our school, and I'd consider it sort of a professional fraternity, sort of. Would you say that's accurate, Julian?
Yeah, I mean it's an organization that values professionality.
Yeah, definitely. And I think a lot of the times I was actually working alone, which was not that great. I think I should have signed up for a lot of the volunteering shifts that involve more people. But I know that definitely whenever I interacted with people, it was great. And like Julian said, I felt a lot of energy from that. And I think for a lot of extroverts, that definitely helps having sort of social environment because misery loves company. And that year I was miserable. And it was great to have sort of a community to express my, shall we say, misery to. But yeah, but I did make a mistake in that year in that I definitely overloaded on activities. And even as an extrovert, it is definitely possible to, overcommit yourself to these social activities. I did okay in academics that year. I was able to maintain the same GPA that I did freshman year. I think I was even a little better. But what I had to give up was sleep. I had to sacrifice a lot of sleep. I was only getting, I think, 4 to 6 hours of sleep every night, which I think you would call horrible. And somehow I was able to still function, but my grades didn't take a hit for it, luckily. And my social activities were pretty okay, but I was just really tired, and my health definitely took a turn for the worse because I was not performing in tennis the way I should have. I came home every day and I kind of wanted to collapse, but I knew that I had to keep going. So I think it's all about those sacrifices you make. Just know that whenever you want to do something, whenever you want to commit to something, you're going to have to give up something else. And whether that's grades, your sleep, or your social activities, something's definitely going to take a hit. So make sure to calculate before you do anything.
Right. It's important to understand that it's important to evaluate where your priorities lie, right? Because correct me if I'm wrong, David, but you joined a lot of those activities, would you say, for the wrong reasons?
Yes, most definitely. I think I definitely tried to add more items onto my resume. And then the second reason why I joined was because I just wanted to have like a social sort of community. I wanted to be, how shall we say, I guess more cool, if that's even the right word to use. I definitely wanted to
Right.
be more socially recognized, shall we say? Yeah.
Right. And that's perfectly valid. That's perfectly legitimate because we're social animals. It's normal to seek social acceptance and we are motivated for social reasons. The things that we do are oftentimes socially motivated. It might seem like we motivate ourselves or the reasons that we have for doing certain things are self-centered, but a lot of times it's actually socially motivated. So I think that your logic behind that is valid, but the mistake that you made was that you didn't really evaluate where your priorities lay, and what you did was you just casted a wide net, hoping to catch as many opportunities as possible to grow your resume and to seem like you were doing a lot, but really the impact that you had in all of those activities were lacking. Do you agree?
Yeah, most definitely.
So the point that I'm trying to get at is we make sacrifices in nearly every decision that we make every single day. Something that we choose, we almost always give up the choice to do something else, right? Like
Right.
I chose at this moment to record this podcast, which takes a minimum of 1 hour every single time we decide to do this, right? That's an hour out of my evening that I have after spending 8 hours at my job, right? I come home from work and I choose purposely to dedicate myself to dedicate an hour, oftentimes it's an hour and a half, to producing this podcast. And then after that, I have to edit this podcast, which takes almost that same amount of time anyway, because I have to listen through it and edit it, which oftentimes takes longer than actually the duration of the episode. So I dedicate this time because it's valuable to me. It's my personal project. It's my baby, for lack of a better word, right? It's something that I'm passionate about, and it's me. It's mine, and it's what I like to do, right? I could very easily cast a wide net like you did in high school. I could try to do everything, but at the end of the day, have I really done everything? I don't think so. I don't think that I would be stretched so thin and my energy would be so drained all the time that I would not be capable of contributing in any important way at all in all of the activities that I chose to take part in, right? I purposefully choose a select few activities in which to partake so that I can contribute in a massively important way. I never want to just be there for the ride. I want to contribute. I want to grow whatever I'm part of, right? So I can't just, it would be the equivalent of like, I'm here, but I can only do 15-minute episodes or even worse than that. Like, I really only have, 15 minutes to record. So the minutes that we take up to set up the podcast, well, that takes away from the length of the podcast. So really we can only have 5 minutes of a podcast episode, which is really nothing, that would be the result if I just decided to like do a little bit of everything. And it's just not possible when you think about it. There's just not enough time which is one thing that is finite, but also we never have enough energy, which is also finite, to be able to do absolutely every socially accepted and good thing out there, right?
Right, most definitely. Yeah, I mean, I think in my high school career, I definitely made a lot of mistakes at the beginning. I joined something that I thought was really impactful, and that was Mesa at the time, now called STEM. And I kind of gave that up, actually. That's one of the things I gave up besides my sleep, sort of, was to kind of transition into these activities that were a little more socially acceptable, that got me the, I guess, social interactions that I wanted, and that built me a sort of resume. I never really fully developed it because I did quit those two activities, tennis and men's league, after that year. And I definitely changed my whole attitude about clubs, about commitments. And I said to myself, like, if I'm not going to be like really into an activity, if I'm not really going to contribute, like you said, if I'm really not going to be a part of something bigger, then I don't really want to do it. And so that kind of narrowed my interests, and it definitely helped me because I think in my junior year and senior year, it all paid off. I was very successful in STEM because I was able to, create these devices, electronic devices that were able to really help clients. And I was able to further expand a club that really helps students who want to be engineers, who want to be STEM professionals, with their career pursuits and even with their high school career, really, because we're all about that community and we want to help each other grow.
Let's not be modest and humble here. You competed at the national level, David,
Yeah.
which is something that no student at our high school did in our club ever. We may have competed in some sort of competition in some other area like sports and other athletic activities, I'm sure, because we have good athletes.
Yeah.
But you're the first to compete at the national level in an engineering competition. And you came out of nowhere. Every single year prior to you, we had almost always failed the national engineering design competition. And that one year you skyrocketed through states competitions and you went to nationals and you won second. That's astounding.
Well, thank you. I didn't want to really bring that up, but you know what? If you feel like that's necessary,
I feel
Yep.
I feel as though it is very important to bring that up because that result that you got to be the first student at our high school to compete at the national level in a national engineering competition for high school students, that result came about because you chose to let go of activities that weren't productive or that weren't valuable to you, and you came to your senses, you reevaluated your priorities, and your priority was engineering. Your passion, your motivation, your drive was for engineering, correct?
Correct. Yep.
And you gave up those extra activities because you wanted to really drill down and focus on engineering. That's the important thing, is to evaluate your priorities and figure out what exactly you want to focus on in life and go all in on that. And I want to make this clear that we're not trying to discourage having interests, having outside interests. But I want to highlight that nobody ever gets remembered for doing everything at once. We may have that impression about some people, like, oh, this person was an engineer, but also a talented writer, but also he built a business, but also he's a salesman too, and he also goes out and does all these athletic activities. The reality is that an individual is able to accomplish all of these things by something that I read in a book called, the book isn't called this, but the concept is called purposeful imbalance, okay? It's the concept of you choose one thing and you go all in on that one thing, right? And you get not like masterful, like you're gonna be the number one person in this skill ever in the history of man. Not that. You go all into this one activity such that you gain a good enough level of skill in that activity to set yourself above, I guess, say the general population, right? Like, I don't know how to go sailing, but somebody who has sailed a great number of miles has a lots more experience than I do, and I guess perhaps for a lot of the world, right? And we may be impressed by that, like, oh, you know how to work a sailboat. Like, that's kind of impressive because not everybody knows how to be a sailor, right? It's the same thing. It's the same concept. You go all in on a skill and you gain enough you gain, what's the word for it? You gain enough skill, you gain enough mastery of that skill to set yourself apart from the general population. I just happened to focus on programming and computer science and software engineering more than other people. And so therefore, I have gained skills that will take other people a long time, right? I didn't learn coding and software engineering all in one night or, over one weekend. It took a lot of time and it took a lot of effort, and people find the skill desirable, right?
Right.
But I also am able to podcast and I'm able to go out and speak publicly, right? I'm very good at presentations. I love delivering presentations. So I'm good at, there we have two things now, right? But did I learn those two things simultaneously? No, I didn't learn those two things simultaneously. Those are two separate skills that I developed at different parts or different times in my life. Okay? The things that I am good at today are skills that I have developed singularly or as singularly as I can. And they have progressed far more than other skills or other times where I've done like 10,000 things at the same time. Okay? It's all about dedicating a good enough amount of time and effort into a single skill or as few skills as possible, or as few things as
that's
possible.
Definitely
so
the mindset shift that I had when I was in my junior year. And that's what led me, as well as my teammates. Let's not forget about my teammates. They were really, really crucial to us winning. And they were able to do something pretty similar because they're really focused on developing their engineering, their coding skills so that we could win this project. And obviously, developing a skill takes a lot of time, and especially as a college student, it can be quite difficult to try to balance, developing a skill with your coursework. So that's why we created UniPlan. UniPlan is an app that is basically an all-in-one student planner that allows you to plan out your day, schedule all your classes, schedule all your homework assignments, so that you can adequately finish all of your activities and social commitments, as well as all the coursework that you have, so that you can have a maximized and fun college experience. So, Julian, you want to talk a little bit more about the app?
Yeah, so earlier I said that I think it's easiest to manage all the tasks that I have that needs to be done immediately before I sort of allocate some time for myself and for my own things that I want to do, right? Of course, it's impossible to sort of stay ahead on everything in life. Right? You can't finish an entire semester's worth of work in one night and then, oh, look at that, I have all of this free time all of a sudden. That's not possible, right? So what I like to do is I look at the schedule of things that I have to do for the entire week. And I look at what's due immediately. That is, due at midnight tonight or tomorrow or in the next, 2 days, right, is usually the scope that I look at things. And if I can get all of those things done, then I can sort of comfortably spend some time, say, playing a game to relax my head and to have some fun, or go out with some friends and get some boba, grab a couple of those tea drinks that I love so much, or maybe try a new recipe in the kitchen because I like to cook. Cooking is a therapeutic activity for me, but it's also really costly in terms of time, right? because I have to go out and get the ingredients, I have to prepare the ingredients, and then I have to finally cook it. And then after that, obviously, after cooking a meal, you have to enjoy the meal that you made, right? So that all takes a lot of time, especially when it's a new recipe and you got to learn everything, right? When it's a recipe in already mastered in your repertoire, then it's really fast to just crank out a meal. But when you're learning something new, it takes a lot of time. And I get that time by completing several tasks that are due in, the immediate 1 to 2 days. And then I can comfortably sort of spend that time and not feel as though I'm procrastinating or I'm spending too much free time on myself. The best way that I find to do that is to have all the tasks laid out and then prioritize them and then schedule them. And before this app, you if you wanted to do this efficiently, you had to schedule it out by yourself. You had to go into your calendar or your agenda and say from 9 to 10 a.m. I have to do this assignment. From 10:30 to 11:30 I have to do this other assignment. And then from 12 to 3 I have to go to class. And then at 4 p.m. I have to do some more studying for this other exam that I have. And you had to do all of that manually. And it turns out that planning and organizing your day takes a lot of energy, mental energy, that could easily be spent on actually doing those activities, right? So you're spending all of this mental energy on planning instead of doing. In UniPlan, what we've done is, and I've mentioned this before, is that we've given you the opportunity, or the ability rather, to automatically schedule all of your tasks so that you take all of the thinking and scheduling out of your way, and you have all of that energy to spend on actually doing those things. And how we like to automatically schedule your tasks is if you've set a priority on your tasks and you have properly measured your energy levels, which you can do inside the app every single day. We will automatically schedule your high priority tasks at the hours when you feel most energized. So not only do you get the mental energy of scheduling taken away from you, right? Or you have all of that mental energy to you to spend on all of your tasks, but you also optimize on your energy levels, your biological prime time. You optimize when you do those tasks so that you can do them more efficiently and more mindfully. And I think that's the true value of the UniPlan app.
All right, most definitely. We're going to have that up soon on the App Store, correct, Julian?
Yep. So we're going to actually open it up to beta testing soon as of the release of this episode. And you'll be able to sign up for the beta at uniplanteam.com. And the app will be on beta test for both the Android platform and the iOS platform.
Right. So obviously we've talked so far about committing to a club, and we talked a lot about social activities and how to balance that with your coursework and your academic life. So now I do want to ask quickly about two more areas, research and work. So obviously you were able to do both during your college career. So can you tell us a little bit about the research you did as well as the work you did, and how you were able to balance that with your packed schedule?
Okay, so let's tackle the research question first. So this is a little hard because research and the amount of effort, the amount of time, and everything else that is involved with research can differ greatly between fields, first of all, but also differ greatly in the area in which you choose to conduct your research, right?
Right.
It's much easier to conduct research in, say, well, I hesitate to choose one that say like it's easier, but let's say it's easier to conduct research in human interaction with computers, because people can just come to you and interact with this app that you've made, and you've learned something, you've gathered some data from that human computer interaction. And that might be easier than, say, a complicated brand new machine learning algorithm that, nobody has ever discovered before, but you're working with your professor to sort of create this new algorithm that can do this task faster. That can be harder. And I'm speaking to the computer scientists out there because that's the kind of research that I did. I'm not entirely familiar with how the other sciences do their research. I know I have a chemistry friend who does research in a lab, and he has to come in even on weekends to these labs and actually do the research work with his professor. So that's all very, very involved, and I have to be there. I'm quite fortunate that in the computer science field, it's much easier for us to do our work remotely. So I was able to do a lot of that at home, and also like away from the classroom. So I didn't have to meet with my professor every single day in order to do my research work. I could do it in the library, or I could do it outside in a class or something, and I could even do it at home. So that was very fortunate for me. So I didn't have to physically be anywhere very much in order to do my research, other than when I needed to meet with my professor so that we can have a discussion and look over the results of what I've done so far. So there was a time commitment there.
Actually, yeah, I do want to add on just a little bit. You were talking about like sort of going into a lab and physically doing research. I do know someone at my school, Johns Hopkins, who is doing research, I believe, about cancer. And he's injecting zebrafish, I think, with cancer cells, and he's seeing like the interaction between the zebrafish and the cancer cells, and how the zebrafish is able to recover from it by using cellular regeneration. So he has to come in, for a few hours every week, and it's definitely a time commitment. I think since it's such a physical environment, and since he has to do all these write-ups, and it's a very if you don't finish the activity right then and there, you can't just leave after an hour has passed. You kind of have to stay there, and you really do have to finish the experiment. So it's definitely a lot more work than, say, computer science. I find it hard to say that, but yeah, it's just for the hard sciences.
I agree with you. Yeah, correct, and I agree with you fully. I agree with you. I'm very fortunate, and I'm speaking from a position of privilege that research for me and for my field is a little less involved in terms of manual labor than, say, the laboratory sciences, right? Where you have to be there physically and do and conduct these activities. Whereas for us, a lot of our research is more like in our heads and writing and talking to other professors, and maybe our hands get dirty when we put hand to keyboard and actually implement the algorithms that we think about, which really is mentally involved, but not very manually involved. And I'm not saying that computer science research is more mentally involved than, say, chemistry research. It's all very mentally involved, but I'm trying to convey that the commitment that you put into your research work differs greatly by field, and also by the area in which you choose to do research. For me, and I've already mentioned this several times, I conducted research in the form of an algorithm. My professor and we thought of this new way of calculating betweenness centrality. And that's a measure of, basically it's a measure on, how important an edge or a node is in a particular community or a graph or a network. Without getting into too much detail, we found that if the graph had certain properties that make it a tree graph, and you don't have to understand what I'm talking about, I'm just trying to explain the research. It turns out that if the graph or the network has certain properties, and we apply this kind of a different algorithm, then it runs very, very fast on this special kind of network. And it turns out that the measure that we get out of that algorithm is also very accurate if we went the traditional route as well. The traditional algorithm is very slow on very, very large networks. So we developed a faster algorithm that, while it only works for special graphs, it illustrates that if you can get down to this special graph, which happens more often than you'd think, you can actually compute this very, very important measure or this very important value very, very quickly and more efficiently. So that was cool. And we were able to implement this algorithm and test it against the traditional methods. And we found the algorithm to be actually one order of magnitude faster. So the traditional method was quadratic time, and our algorithm ended up becoming linear time. So that's awesome. One whole magnitude faster. So that's cool. And my time committed for that was I just read materials, books, research papers, a little bit over the summer, but a majority of that was the first part of the semester. And then the second part of the semester was when my professor started talking more intelligently about the subject, more intelligently about the actual research we were going to do. So we talked about the algorithm, and we wrote it out. We tested the algorithm on a whiteboard, like test our logic and to see if it works on one kind of network, and then let's test on a bigger network, and then finally we got down to actually coding the algorithm to see if it works in application, right? So that was the kind of work that I did in research.
Right, and that covers the research part. So obviously, you also held a internship during your college career. So can you tell us a little bit more about that and how you were able to balance it?
So it's interesting. I chuckle at the fact that you ask me how I balance that, because how I would describe that time in my life is very, 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 very imbalanced. It was very clearly skewed towards my career and my academics and my work. And the other side of my life was almost completely thrown out the window. I went out very, very few times. I was mostly by myself. Aside from living with my boyfriend and my dogs, I was just by myself. I didn't go out with friends that often. I didn't really talk to people that much that semester, other than people in my courses and my work. There would be some days where I would go into the office, and this is not like, I'm not like shading NASA, but there would be some days where I came into the office and everybody was so involved in their own work, which was all very interesting and all very good because, people were focused. But there would be times where we were all so focused that I didn't talk to anybody in the office, like at all. There would be full 8-hour days where I would sit there in the morning until evening, and then I left without ever saying a single word to anybody other than good morning to my mentor. That's
Wow.
astounding, right?
That is incredible. Yeah.
Right. And I'm not encouraging it. I'm not saying it's healthy by any means. It was rather unhealthy. But I always go back to my point in the last episode that this was a choice. This was a calculated choice. And I knew that it was going to be hard, and I knew it was going to be a struggle, but the struggle was for a reason. I would have NASA on my resume. And like that might sound like a very selfish, like, I'm doing this NASA opportunity to pad my resume. But you know that I value my career, I value my profession, and I value my skills. And having NASA as an accolade on my resume, which is a representation of my career, it was very important to me. And I was given the internship offer in let's say November, going towards December, and that the internship would begin very shortly in January at the time. I wasn't going to say no to NASA. Right? You don't receive an internship offer from NASA and then turn it down, right? So I wasn't going to say no, and I knew it was going to be hard, but I chose to continue and I chose to press on because I valued it and I struggled for a reason. And then now I have 2 NASA internships on my resume, and that are directly related to my work, to my line of work, and my career is where it is probably because of it.
Right, most definitely. And I think you bring up a really good point about sacrifices and choices because, obviously for me, myself, like I had to sacrifice a lot of my social time. I definitely wasn't really hanging out with my friends junior year. I was, spending hours every day after school, going over to my teammate's house, working on this project, writing papers, fixing whatever code needed to be fixed, doing the poster. And it definitely was a struggle. but it was a choice that I made that year, and it was a choice that paid off for me because then I was able to have a second place national win on my resume, and that was that was on my college application, and I think it definitely speaks volumes as to the importance of just kind of sacrificing certain things in your life in order to make way for things that you find fulfilling, extremely important.
I think the important thing to mention is that these sacrifices that we made have short-term, in the moment, negatives, cons,
Losses.
right?
Yep.
Losses is the word I was searching for. Good. We have these short-term losses, less time, less free time, less energy, less social interactions, less fun. Let's be honest, less fun, right?
Right.
But what we get out of it is almost you almost can't place a value on what you get out of that sacrifice, right?
Right.
You gained very, very valuable skills from that competition. And I gained very, very valuable skills from my NASA internship. I learned software engineering principles that many professionals today don't understand or don't grasp. And I learned those principles even before taking a software engineering course. That's huge, right? It put me at an enormous advantage above my other peers at university. And it was an enormous struggle. But we made that calculated choice, and it was painful in the moment, but what we got out of it was just invaluable. We just cannot place a number or a tangible value on what we got out of it, right? And it's tough in the moment, and we always tend to think in the moment, and that's the reason why not everybody does what we do.
Right, most definitely. I mean, I don't think it's easy to do the things that either you did or even I did. I don't want to, brag about it or anything but I do want to bring up the fact that it is pretty hard. It requires hard decisions, lots of sacrifices, and would you say everybody can do it?
Everybody is able, but not everybody does. That's the huge thing, right?
Right.
Is that and I may be, like I say everybody is able to do it as in like everybody has the physical capability of doing these things if they're given the resources to do so. Obviously, I can't do the same things I did if I grew up in my parents' homeland, in Vietnam, right? Like if I grew up there, then obviously I don't have the same opportunities as I do. But let's say in a very, very perfect and what's that word? Utopian society. Yeah, good. That utopian society where everybody is given the same amount of opportunities as your neighbor. Then everybody has the physical capability to do what we did, to do what I did, to do what you did, right? The reality is that not everybody actually does take the chance, take the opportunity to do that thing.
Right, so definitely. I mean, like, even for us, I think starting this podcast was a conscious choice. And I think that anybody really, I mean, if they really wanted to, they could start a podcast. They could do blogs like we do. But not everybody does. And I think that's because, people don't find it valuable enough for them to do. People have other interests. And that is perfectly fine. And that is why we are all very different, and we're able to contribute different things to society. And if you want to help us with creating this podcast, with creating our blogs, and with our app, you can come and support us on social media. On Facebook, we are at Uniplan Team. Same on Twitter, we are at Uniplan. And you can find our podcast on iTunes, on Google Play, on Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, and am I missing anything, Julian?
Did you mention Spotify?
Yep, I did, I believe. Spotify, YouTube as well. Yes, we are on YouTube under Uniplan. Yep. Just search up the Study Space podcast, and you should be able to find us on YouTube and all the other aforementioned platforms. All right, that's going to be it for this episode. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. Make sure to support us on our social media platforms. And until then, see you in the next episode.